This is Valley View News.
As the population grows in places like Los Angeles, how will humans face the growing problem of pollution? Doctors in the LA area are telling parents toddlers learn better by playing instead of watching TV. And more than 20 people have been arrested during protests at Occupy Atlanta.
Good afternoon and welcome to Valley View News. I'm Andrea Anderson.
And I'm Taylor Cage.
Michael Jackson's personal doctor now stands convicted of involuntary manslaughter in the superstar's death. During the 6-week trial, prosecutors depicted Conrad Murray as a reckless physician who abandoned Jackson while the singer was under the effects of powerful anesthetic propofol. The Los Angeles jury deliberated 9 hours before the verdict was reached. Sentencing is set for November 29th.
5 people were arrested at a downtown Atlanta park in an anti-Wall Street protest because they refused to leave after curfew. Protesters spilled into the streets, blocking traffic. Police said they would enforce the law and warn protesters of the mandatory curfew. Atlanta police have made several arrests after Atlanta mayor told demonstrators not to sleep in the park overnight.
Occupy LA organizers have had to boost security because of several violent incidents. Police say one woman was arrested for setting another person's clothes on fire. Another woman struck a man with a tent pole. Both women were booked on suspicion of assault with a deadly weapon. The Camp Safety Committee is working on ways to keep the protests nonviolent.
In Simi Valley, police officers held a simulation of a high-risk vehicle bust at a police canine conference. Maddie Pumilia has the story.
Police officers across North America have come together in Simi Valley to train their canines. Simi Valley officer Jason Wilkerson explains what the conference is all about.
It helps bring in different trainers from different locations throughout the country. Everybody exchange ideas for ways to deploy the dogs for different situations.
The officers are practicing high-risk vehicle stops with their canines. They did a simulation of what could happen in a real situation. The white car acted as the high-risk vehicle. 2 police cars rode up to pull over the vehicle. Jessica acted as a suspect and put her hands up in the air.
I think it's awesome giving the dogs the opportunity to get their training done, and there's obviously a little bit of danger behind it, but I like that.
The police officer held up his gun. The dog barked as the suspect. Police officers followed the dog to the car. The officers checked the trunk of the car for another suspect. After the simulation was over, the officers went over what they could do better. Officer Snow explains what he's learned by doing the high-risk vehicle exercise.
After the dog's gone up to the car, come back and then put them away before you go out and search the trunk.
Simi Valley Sergeant James Buckley says the true benefit of the conference is the officers learn from each other.
They'll pull the best from each canine team to make each individual team a better law enforcement tool.
Simi Valley, Maddie Pamilia, Valley View News.
As Greece deals with financial crisis and political turmoil, it is now a frontrunner for the next prime minister. Former European Central Bank Vice President Lucas Papademos is the man most likely to become the leader of the country. Should he become prime minister, he will be in charge of a government that is almost out of money. Greece's government continues to work towards a bailout from other European countries, which could determine the future of the euro.
People in Italy are demanding Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi step down. The Italian debt crisis has sparked mass protests in the country. Demonstrators say Berlusconi is not capable of handling Italy's economic problems. He is also being criticized for sex scandals and problems in his business affairs. Berlusconi has rejected demands that he resign.
The United Nations says the Earth has reached a population milestone, the birth of the world's 7th billionth person. Valley View's reporter Jack Bryant looks into the challenges the next generation faces as it grows up in the 21st century. Jack?
With more people comes a need for more of just about everything. Clean air and water, food, land for crops and homes. But what happens when we exploit and pollute those resources? In part 2 in this series on population growth, we'll talk about what could happen if people take from the environment and don't give enough back.
As human population continues to grow, pollution and waste management will become problems worldwide.
We pollute water, we pollute air,
Okay, these are the main things that you pollute. By polluting air and water, you pollute human beings.
In Beijing, the air quality index has been consistently in the 100 to 300 spectrum. That's the price of rapid economic development, and people are getting sick. Professor Olwert sees China following in America's footsteps.
They're already quickly bumping into the late 60s, early 70s of the US era where we started saying, we need pollution controls because this stinks.
And if we don't make a change,
I think you're going to see higher cancer rates. People are going to be dying at 40 instead of 70.
Professor Michaud says a key change to avoid danger will need to be
a change in the way Americans and people in the middle and upper classes consume generally. That requires a whole lot of work on the part of citizens of the world as well as politicians.
At a sustainability event at Cal State Northridge, Green activist and former city council member Andy Schrader had an important message for students.
We only have a certain amount of natural resources. If we keep consuming at the rate we're consuming, it's not sustainable.
And this consumerism idea is also transferring to the emerging economies. Go to India, go to China. Now they are kind of living the American way of dream. You know, the 1970s and 1980s American dream. They are not that much aware about the environment. They focus on the economic growth.
But Wilde Emanuel says he believes in the power of each generation to tackle society's problems. A sustainability event volunteer says it's up to each individual to change their behavior.
Everybody has to take action. The solutions are local. Every person has to be responsible, every person has to be aware, and every person has to really make an effort, a conscious effort every single day to reduce their demands on the environment.
Now, the Clean Air Council says the average American uses and throws away about 500 paper cups each year. And as we get closer to Christmas, here's an interesting fact. People throw away about 38,000 miles of ribbon each year. That's long enough to tie a bow around the Earth. Back to you.
The Pentagon will cut its spending by about $450 billion over the next 10 years. Defense Secretary Leon Panetta told the New York Times he must protect national security interests while shaping the Pentagon into a less expensive agency. Panetta said he must consider cuts in the nuclear arsenal as well as base closures. Around the world, Panetta said the most delicate issues to consider will be whether or not to raise fees on the military's health insurance program. The defense cuts would reduce the Pentagon's budget by about 8%.
When people hear the word addiction, usually drugs and gambling come to mind. Valley View's Myra Castaneda has the story of a new kind of addiction, the internet.
A red notification on a person's Facebook page may cause their nervous system to release oxytocin, the love hormone. A growing number of studies are comparing internet and Facebook addiction to other addictions such as smoking and gambling. CSUN students say they are not addicted to Facebook, but do know people who may be.
You see them posting things every like 20 minutes or whatever, and I have like 1,000 photos.
Posting on a constant, regular basis, always checking, oh, did someone text, did someone write me, or they have notification being sent to their cell phone.
Oxygen Media and Lightspeed Research surveyed over 1,600 adults about their Facebook usage. They found that a third of women checked their Facebook as soon as they woke up.
The main reason people get involved in addictions of any kind is that they are trying to avoid uncomfortable feelings, usually feelings of anxiety, depression, or problems that are encroaching on them in their lives that they don't have a solution to.
Via email, psychologist Dr. Kimberly Young says she started netaddiction.com in 1995. There is even an online assessment test anyone can take to see if they may be addicted to the internet. Like any other addiction, internet addiction has health risks. One chiropractor says spending too much time with your head tilted down can cause a sore neck or even early spinal arthritis. Smartphones like this one have applications that make it faster and easier for people to access their Facebook page. The American Psychological Association says that internet addiction is a new field of study, but more psychologists are beginning to do research on it. In Northridge, I am Myra Castaneda, reporting for Valley View News.
Coming up, find out what pediatricians are saying about toddlers and TV, and stay tuned for our sports coverage.